Part 20. I'm Really Immortal. Author, Chulian Kuikan Rusiahua. Chapter 191. For Lu Yuang, self-awareness, inner recognition, the first impression of others, and the age you need are your true age. The age on the ID card is nothing more than a ridiculous, ugly number that is slanderous, unrealistic, and does not conform to the reality and everyone's perception. Anyone who sees her would not think that she is 36 years old, so the age on her ID card is a lie. For women, the growth of age is the knife used by Ling Chi to kill her. Every time she dreams about her age at midnight, she thinks of the age on her ID card, and the fear of bone-gnawing and soul-gnawing pain makes it difficult to sleep. For a moment, she even cannot believe how she can do it. She is so old, but she still thinks of herself as a little girl. Fortunately, the age on his ID card was a lie, Lu Yuang thought. Lu Yuang actually has no objection to Lu Chang'an and An Nuan falling in love. Although Lu Chang'an does not look as mature, steady, elegant and funny as his uncle friend, as a student who has just graduated from high school, he is already quite good, let alone mastered the craftsmanship of tailoring, which Lu Yuang admired very much. A man who can make clothes for the girl he likes is even more touching than someone who can knit woolen gloves and socks for his girlfriend. After all, that kind of handmade cheongsam is really densely stitched with stitches and requires a lot of energy and effort. It is completely understandable that An Nuan is attracted to this monograph, which is a labor of love. But there was something wrong about Lu Chang'an that Lu Yuang couldn't describe. There was always a sense of familiarity that seemed similar to him, but he couldn't figure it out. Could it be that he was the boy who he saw while hiding in Bailong Center supermarket that day going to get the wishing sign from the locker? If Lu Chang'an is, then Lu Chang'an is the uncle's son. In this case, the situation seems to be extremely complicated. Lu Yuang looked at Lu Chang'an suspiciously. "Mom, what are you looking at everywhere?" An Nuan noticed immediately. "I saw someone selling ice jelly noodles," Lu Yuang said casually, thinking in his mind that the best situation now is that Lu Chang'an doesn't know that his father and An Nuan are netizens who chat very well, and they don't know either. This An Nuan is actually Lu Yuang. They have no communication in this regard with each other, it must be true. Who has nothing to do to chat with netizens and tell their children? But this uncle, how could this uncle not know that his son's name is Lu Chang'an? When he was chatting with him, he revealed Lu Chang'an's name. No wonder he told many times when An Nuan was about to break up with Lu Chang'an, this uncle he always tried his best to defend Lu Chang'an, and occasionally echoed it, which seemed more like casual perfunctory. What about An Nuan and Lu Chang'an, what do they know? Lu Yuang found that her mind was confused. She couldn't figure out this messy identity change. Forget it, why do you think so much? There is a chance to test whether Lu Chang'an is the boy who took the wishing card that day. Ice jelly noodles are the best, Hans Hizzy said greedily. My mother likes to put wolfberry in the cold noodles she makes, Zhang Dao said. Everyone should eat wolfberry, Lu Chang'an said. Lu Yuang came back to her senses. I heard that the cold powder is mixed with foot washing water. You must not eat it. It is very unhygienic. You might die if you eat it. Mom, according to the articles you collected in Moments, you have nothing to eat except the green onions you grew on your balcony, An Nuan said unreasonably. Her mother was obviously a high-level intellectual, but she seemed like grandpas and grandmas of that age also like to take what they see on marketing accounts on WeChat Moments seriously. Last time, Lu Yuang actually forwarded a rumor to An Nuan that he secretly deducted 80 cents for every like on WeChat through the operator. An Nuan couldn't delete her mother, so she had to block her circle of friends, but there was no way to stop her from sending it directly. I would rather believe it or not. I have made a reservation tonight. The restaurant's kitchen process is fully visible. Each kitchen operator has a camera to record the perspective video. I will watch them cooking. Although the price of this restaurant is also very expensive, Lu Yuang thinks it is worth it, and she usually does not eat out. Mother Lu spent a lot of money. Zhang Dao was not polite, but he was very obedient to please. I know this restaurant, it's popular. I'm going to have a big meal today. Hans Hizzy has a special relationship with the Nuan family, so of course she just wants to eat. These restaurants are all full of gimmicks. I don't think the food they serve may be as delicious as Lu Chang'an's, and Nuan said nonchalantly. Do you mind if I bring ingredients and use your kitchen when I have the chance? Lu Chang'an said to Nuan. Let their little mouths know how powerful you are, and Nuan said with some pride. Lu Yuwang pursed his lips, remembering some of the interactive plots between the male and female protagonists about Ziyazwai in a romance novel he read yesterday, and looked serious with a deadpan expression. Lu Chang'an got off the car at the intersection in front of Bailong Center and walked slowly towards his home. In this hot summer afternoon, lazily walking under the scorching sun, Lu Chang'an stretched out his hand to press his cheek and inserted his fingers into his hair. I walked back and looked up at the sky over the city. It was such a colorful day today. Compared with the college entrance examination, the more important thing in his mind at this moment is of course the Nikola Tesla Research Center. In fact, humans have been obsessed with trying to improve their physical fitness since ancient times. It's not new. Ancient methods such as alchemy, qi training, Bigu, and fangzongshu can all be classified into this category. However, most of these methods are really only for strengthening the body and prolonging life. It can be said that there is a qualitative leap, allowing human beings to transcend limits and explode potential. Some modern scientific research is more effective. These modern scientific research may not necessarily care about extending people's lives, but it can be achieved by bursting out astonishing power in a short period of time. The Arya brothers are a concrete manifestation of this research direction. What they have achieved is a fundamental change. It is not an exaggeration to say that they are new humans who have gained a new level of evolution in physical fitness. The Arya brothers don't seem to have anything to do with Mrs. Karnstein, but to carry out Mrs. Karnstein's mission, they don't need to know her. The level is still too low. Only the third wife should know more about what Lu Chang'an wants to know. Lu Chang'an turned to look at Bailong Center and bought 2 crispy ice cream cones. In the 1990s, this type of cone ice cream was very popular and sold for 1.5 yuan. It still sells for 1.5 yuan now. He ate one first. Lu Chang'an tore open the wrapping paper, bit into the finely chopped chocolate and peanuts and went home. Thank you for your generous reward, thank you very much. I'm really immortal. Author, Chu Lian Kui Kan Ru Xiahua. Chapter 192. When Lu Chang'an returned home, Zhou Dongdong was writhing under the sycamore tree. What are you doing? Lu Chang'an asked Zhou Dongdong while eating ice cream. Zhou Dongdong stopped twisting and looked at the ice cream in Lu Chang'an's hand. He was stunned for a while before coming back to his senses. I'm doing the exercises you taught me to grow taller. You want to grow taller? Lu Chang'an said somewhat unexpectedly. Zhou Dongdong didn't like to move much except when she was playing. Her favorite thing to do was to sit still until she was full. It turned out that she had no interest in Lu Chang'an's growth exercises at all. Someone bullied my mother today. I want to grow taller quickly so that no one can bully my mother anymore. Zhou Dongdong crossed his arms angrily. It's okay. The person who bullied your mother has been caught by me and given to the police. Uncle Lu Chang'an held down her head because Zhou Dongdong had just finished speaking and began to twist around again. This was simply vilifying his invention, and she couldn't be allowed to continue doing it. Really? Zhou Dongdong was shocked and jumped up happily. Unfortunately, Lu Chang'an held him down and did not jump up. He had to wave his hands like bird wings. Of course. Read it with me. Brother Chang'an is invincible in the world. He is witty, brave, and strategizing. He is resourceful and resourceful. He is invincible and brave. If you read it correctly, I will give you ice cream. Lu Chang'an squatted down and ate ice cream in front of Zhou Dongdong's face. If you read it incorrectly, You have to admit that you are a stupid kid. Brother Chang'an is invincible. Zhou Dongdong said, holding his breath and approaching the ice cream on Lu Chang'an's lips. What's behind? Wit and brave. You're right. You're smart and brave. What's next? He's a stupid kid. Lu Chang'an was very angry. Zhou Dongdong actually took the opportunity to scold him, you are a stupid kid. Even if you don't want to admit it, the facts have proved it. Forget it, I am not only invincible, resourceful, clever, and brave, but also magnanimous. I won't argue with you anymore. So Lu Chang'an gave Zhou Dongdong the ice cream. Thank you, Brother Chang, and Zhou Dongdong jumped up again, sat on the small bench under the sycamore tree, and ate the ice cream without moving. Eat slowly. If you eat too fast, you will have diarrhea, and the ice cream will not be hidden in your belly. It will be wasted. Lu Chang'an went back to change clothes, and then came out to remind Zhou Dongdong. Zhou Dongdong quickly slowed down in fear, and then quickly ate a little bit without wasting much. After eating for a while, Zhou Dongdong moved the small stool to Lu Chang'an, who was squatting on the threshold, and continued eating. Zhou Shuling came back worriedly, and she felt relieved when she saw the whole family eating together. She was happy and angry at the same time. Chang'an, are you okay? I was planning to call the police. If you catch me, I won't believe you. Later I turned off my phone when I called you, and you didn't reply when I sent messages. I didn't pay attention. Lu Chang'an took out his mobile phone and looked at it. It was turned off. Brother Chang'an caught the bad guy who bullied my mother and sent him to the police, uncle. He has been locked up. Zhou Dongdong immediately reported loudly and helped Lu Chang'an fill in the content that he had not made up. This is not wrong. In the eyes of children like Zhou Dongdong, if they are caught by the police, uncle, they will of course be locked up. Really, Zhou Shuling was surprised and very happy, but she didn't jump up. Then are you okay? Brother Chang'an is invincible in the world, witty and brave. Zhou Dongdong didn't remember the next part. He hesitated twice and stopped talking with his mouth filled with food. I was fine. Then I went to my girlfriend's house to check my scores. Lu Chang'an regretted that Zhou Dongdong couldn't remember the full text and couldn't help him cheer for him correctly. He was always embarrassed to say it himself. By the way, the college entrance examination scores are all out. Can you go to Hunan University? Zhou Shuling looked at Lu Chang'an expectantly. She always felt that if Lu Chang'an had good academic performance, he could also be a role model for Zhou Dongdong, although Zhou Dongdong seemed it's a bit hard to expect, but the power of role models is endless. Yes, I think it's over 600 points. It's solid. Then let's serve the wine. You can take the test whatever you want to drink. Then we also need to serve wine. How many tables can we book in the hotel? Forget it. Seeing that he really didn't mean it, Zhou Shuling was happy for him, but didn't say much. Instead, she taught Zhou Dongdong a lesson, because in comparison, the gap between Zhou Dongdong and Lu Chang'an in terms of learning was larger than the height gap. There are too many. Zhou Dongdong was eating, and he was deaf as if there was a barrier around him. After Zhou Shuling left, Zhou Dongdong asked Lu Chang'an, Brother Chang'an, are you getting married by serving wine? Because I study well and do well in exams, I have to hold a banquet to celebrate. The banquet is a table full of delicious food. If you study well and get good grades in the future, you can also serve wine. Zhou Dongdong was surprised. It turns out that studying well is really useful. After eating the ice cream, Lu Chang'an went to wash his hair again. When he came out, he found that Zhou Dongdong had also finished eating the ice cream and was continuing to dance her wildly twisting sex. Lu Chang'an didn't stop her, just dance. In the eyes of children, it seems that as long as they grow up, they can realize all their wishes. Zhou Dongdong wants to grow up quickly and protect his mother. Only then did Lu Chang'an take out his mobile phone to read the messages. Except for Zhou Shuling's messages, all the others were from Lu Yuwang. As I thought. When Lu Yuwang was in the living room, his phone was facing away from him, his eyes looking at the ceiling, but his fingers were randomly clicking on the screen to secretly take pictures of him. "Uncle, did you fight when you were young? I like boys who dare to take action. I don't like those who only try to reason when their girlfriends are bullied, or who scream hysterically like a hen. But I don't dare to shake my fist with others. Today we are checking the college entrance examination results. I am so nervous, so nervous. Uncle, have you ever taken the college entrance examination? My mother is amazing. She is now a professor, teaching college students. What do you do, Uncle?" I only sent 2 messages, probably because Uncle was too slow to reply to messages and his enthusiasm was dampened. I like to reason with people and convince them with virtue. Everyone must be reasonable at all times. After all, if I don't reason, others can't beat me. That would be too bullying, and I don't like bullying. Yes, I think being reasonable is the basic social moral bottom line to safeguard human beings' needs for fairness. Society is certainly unfair, but human beings cannot help but pursue fairness. As for the college entrance examination, I have taken it twice, and both were fine. Haha, then you must still be very good at fighting, but you must not be good at studying, and you have to repeat your studies. Why don't you tell me what you do? The message was quickly replied. What a coincidence, I'm also a professor. Isn't she doing a spa? Lu Chang'an did not explain that taking the college entrance examination twice was not a repeat. Instead, he received a message from An Nuan. An Nuan asked if Zhou Dongdong was out of school. He could take Zhou Dongdong to have dinner with him in the evening. An Nuan often had 3 bowls at Lu Chang'an's house. Zhou Dongdong was so impressed that he even took Zhou Dongdong out for a walk last time. Although Lu Chang'an said Zhou Dongdong was very stupid, and Nuan felt that Zhou Dongdong was not very stupid, but only 50 or 6 stupid. Today's goal was originally to update 4, but I was a little fascinated by watching a series of documentaries at night. After all, this is also writing material that must be accumulated. 5 updates tomorrow. This is a promise, not a goal. The goal doesn't have to be achieved. I promise that I will try my best. All kinds of requests. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. I'm really immortal. Author, Chulian Kui Kan Ru Xiahua. Chapter 193. Lu Chang'an sent a message to Zhou Shuling and took Zhou Dongdong to have a meal. It's not a long journey, so of course we can walk there. Zhou Dongdong imitated Lu Chang'an and walked slowly for a while, then ran quickly, then opened his hands and spun like a top. Naturally, he didn't spin as fast as she imagined. After staggering for a distance, he pressed against the wall. Fell to the ground. Lu Chang'an passed by Zhou Dongdong, who was rolling over with his hands in his pockets. Zhou Dongdong got up and caught up with Lu Chang'an again. He became more honest after leaving the community, pulling Lu Chang'an's trouser pocket and looking around. Children are so annoying. They imagine themselves to be little planes, uncles from the People's Liberation Army, Flash Beyblade Man, etc. All day long. Lu Chang'an twisted his neck and stared at the sun in the distance with squinted eyes. It's the Lightspeed Gyro Man, Zhou Dongdong loudly corrected Lu Chang'an's mistake. Did you know that as long as you rotate fast enough, you can surpass the speed of the Earth's rotation? If others can live in 1 day, you can live in 2 days. If the speed is faster or even 10 days, you can be 10 times longer than other children. Grow up at great speed. Lu Chang'an correctly explained to Zhou Dongdong what Lightspeed Gyro Man is. Zhou Dongdong couldn't understand anything else at all, but he understood it after growing up 10 times faster than other children. but he couldn't believe it because many times brother Chang'an tried to get her to be beaten by her mother. What's more, Zhou Dongdong is not as powerful as Lightspeed Beyblade Man. She only fell down after spinning for a short time, so how powerful Lightspeed Beyblade Man is. Keep spinning, take your time, and one day you will be able to do it. Don't want. I trust you. I don't believe you. You break my heart so much. Then just cry for me and I will believe you. I could slap you and make you cry. I didn't do anything wrong. Lu Chang'an and Zhou Dongdong were talking and came to Beilong Center and saw Bai Hui, Miao Yingying, and Lin Xinhua. Bai Hui stood a little aside, while Miao Yingying and Lin Xinhua faced each other. Miao Yingying looked at the ice rink on the ground floor next to her expressionlessly. Lin Xinhua was holding a shoebox in his hand, probably a pair of trendy shoes. She seemed to have racked her brains and was helpless. Are you guys going to check your scores too? Zhou Dongdong jumped between Miao Yingying and Lin Xinhua, and Lu Chang'an had no choice but to go this way, and asked with concern as a classmate. Bai Hui rolled her eyes at Lu Chang'an. Is this like checking scores together? But when she suddenly met Lu Chang'an, Bai Hui was very resistant to feeling happy, but she found that she was still a little happy, which made her a little unhappy again. Ha, how did you do in the exam? It must be no problem. I already know that Gao Duai is second in the province, Lin Xinhua said with some disappointment. His score was lower than what he should have been able to take. After all, the college entrance examination he also spent a lot of time playing games before, but he has made his choice and has no regrets. It's not bad. Lu Chang'an didn't ask about other people's scores. Firstly, he didn't care much. Secondly, his scores must be higher than theirs, so as not to make people think that he was superior. I heard Zhang Dao tell me about your results. I'm so proud of you. Miao Yingying turned her head and said enviously, I wonder how the ranking scores compare with the college entrance examination scores. Lin Xinhua looked ashamed, sighed, and handed over the shoe box in his hand. I remember that you used to like this pair of shoes, so I bought them after my salary was paid this month. Miao Yingying reached out to take it. Just when Lin was expecting something unexpected, Miao Yingying threw the shoe box away. The shoe box was thrown away, and the box, shoes, and paper pads were scattered everywhere. Lin Xinhua watched blankly. We have broken up. Please don't contact me again in the future, Miao Yingying said firmly. A woman changes her mind and wants to break up, even if 10 cows can't bring her back. A woman is sentimental, but also ruthless. Lu Chang'an really wants to recite a poem to suit the occasion, but he just thinks about it. Lin Xinhua walked over, bent down, picked up the shoes, arranged them, and trotted away with his head lowered. That brother is crying. Zhou Dongdong saw it. Miao Yingying was a little surprised, but turned her head. Why is it like this? Bai Hui couldn't bear to persuade Miao Yingying. If you do this, we won't be able to be friends in the future. It's impossible to be friends after we break up. Miao Yingying gritted her teeth and said, the long-term pain is worse than the short-term pain. I just want him to understand that there is no possibility for me and him, and I don't want him to misunderstand. For a man, first love has a great impact on him. Some people may be scumbags from the beginning, but after encountering this situation, some people no longer believe in love and feel that it is better to hurt themselves than to be hurt by others. It starts casually and ends casually without thinking about the impact on others. Lu Chang'an calmly concluded, even if the love between boys and girls is not as bad as described in some non-mainstream literature, it is not as bad as described in pure love literature. So beautiful. You mean, Lin Xinhua will become a scumbag in the future, and it's all my fault? Miao Yingying said unconvinced. The reading comprehension answer is correct. Lu Chang'an nodded. There is no right or wrong choice, but the responsibility must be borne by each person. He doesn't have to become a scumbag. If he is hurt by others, he will hurt others. This is his own choice. Why should he blame Yingying? Bai Hui simply wanted to argue with Lu Chang'an. You are right, Lu Chang'an nodded. Bai Hui opened her mouth. It was so boring to talk to Lu Chang'an. You and An Nuan are also in love between a boy and a girl, right? What do you mean by that? Miao Yingying seemed to grasp the reason behind Lu Chang'an's words. Hey, it's not that beautiful either. Lu Chang'an looked at Miao Yingying with great confusion. When we discuss issues, we usually discuss them in terms of common situations. You see, your appearance, figure and overall quality are all common situations. You will naturally adapt to common situations. But An Nuan is different. She belongs to a very small group of people. Her appearance, figure, and overall quality are all among the most beautiful. Miao Yingying bulged her eyes as if she had seen Gao Duiai. No wonder Gao Duiai's good friend was Lu Chang'an. Being good-looking means beautiful love, Bai Hui was naturally unconvinced. Although her grades and height were not as good as those of An Nuan, she was also very good-looking, and both her figure and An Nuan had their own strengths. Why are you being unreasonable? When I talk about groups, you talk about individuals, and when I talk about individuals, you talk about groups. Lu Chang'an waved his hand. I mean, just like wild puffer fish is delicious, but if it is not handled properly, it's poisoned, but it's inevitable that it's delicious. Whether it's poisoned or not, you can't deny whether it's delicious. And Nuan is beautiful, so no matter whether the love itself is beautiful or not, it must be beautiful when she's here. Miao Yingying and Bai Hui looked at each other. Goodbye. You don't care if you did well in the college entrance examination, but you still go to the person you just broke up with or the single person to show your love by hitting others. This is too much and cannot be tolerated. Miao Yingying and Bai Hui left without even talking to Lu Chang'an. It should be no problem to complete the 5th shift before about 2 o'clock in the morning. Just like today, I took the initiative to say that I would work overtime tomorrow. Which leader would say that you must complete the overtime task before 12 o'clock, otherwise you will not be counted as working overtime? This does not make sense, right? I'm really immortal. Author, Chulian Kui Kan Ru Xiahua. Chapter 194. Lu Chang'an waved goodbye to the backs of Miao Yingying and Bai Hui. Beilong Center opened not long ago, but it is obviously doing well and has become a new landmark for meetings and gatherings. The two sisters seemed unhappy just now. Children are quite sensitive to other people's emotions. No, Lu Chang'an shook his head. I sincerely taught them to be self-aware, and they also deeply realized their shortcomings. We had a candid exchange, and everyone was very happy. Zhou Dongdong couldn't understand it. Many of the words were complicated. They are different from you. I say you are a stupid child, but you always refuse to admit it, Lu Chang'an said to Zhou Dongdong, very disappointed. Because I'm not, I'm smart and brave. Zhou Dongdong would not admit it. What did Brother Chang'an just say? That it was delicious. You heard it when it said it was delicious. What's delicious? It's delicious, but you'll die if you eat it. How could there be such a thing? Zhou Dongdong couldn't believe it. Children don't understand death very well, but it's instinct to feel terrible. Delicious food is what Zhou Dongdong likes the most in the world, but death is the most horrible. How could it be possible? If there is such a thing, should you eat it or not? Are you thinking that you will die if you eat it, and whether you should eat it or not? Lu Chang'an looked at Zhou Dongdong's eyes moving as if they were trembling, and felt that she was thinking about an extremely stupid question. Zhou Dongdong was an honest kid and nodded vigorously. Lu Chang'an slapped her on the butt. Lu Chang'an and Zhou Dongdong continued to stroll slowly. Lu Chang'an lay on the edge of the rink and watched it for a while. Zhou Dongdong thought that the ice rink was actually a huge ice cream that would definitely last a whole summer. Lu Chang'an felt that if the ice rink was like a huge ice cream, then the people skating around on it wearing skates would be like flies. This was an ice cream covered with flies. The two chatted for a while about the ice rink being like ice cream, and then received a call from An Nuan asking where he was. We met at the elevator on the restaurant floor. It turned out that Lu Yuwang visited 2 stores before going to the spot, so he was delayed for a while and just finished it now. When they met, Lu Chang'an originally wanted to introduce Zhou Dongdong, but An Nuan had already told Zhang Dao and Hans Hizi that there was a kid named Zhou Dongdong who came to have a meal. Zhou Dongdong called his sisters in circles, including Lu Yuwang, which made Lu Yuwang reserved for a moment, but he was still trembling with joy. He was really a smart child. The restaurant is on the 89th floor. There is a large pool at the entrance of the restaurant. There are lush bamboos planted on both sides of the pool. The breeze blows in the corridor, the water surface is sparkling, and a few koi carp swim in the shallow water. There is a portrait of Alexander in the reception area, which uses modern fine paintings to vividly show the style of this legendary figure. So Alexander looks like this. Lu Chang'an gained knowledge again. The waitress smiled softly. This painting is the work of Mr. Quaz. It is completely authentic. It was auctioned by the restaurant for us $1.8 million. After hearing that it cost $1.8 million, several girls and women stopped and took a look at the huge and detailed painting embedded in the wall. I thought it was a photo. Zhang Dao looked at it again and again, but still found it difficult to tell whether it was a painting or a photo. Alexander the Great was born on July 20, 356 BC. He has been dead for more than 2,000 years. Where can I get this photo? Hans Hizi's history is pretty good. Alexander the Great didn't exist at all, Lu Yuwang said shockingly. The waitress gave an awkward smile. It really came to everyone. This is not the first time I heard that Alexander the Great did not exist at all. An Nuan looked at Lu Chang'an. I have never met Alexander the Great. I only know that the Central Asians were the first to claim the existence of Alexander the Great. At first, the Europeans themselves did not believe it, but later they wrote one history after another. Central Asia is a very special place. It's interesting. The mythical characters they claim to be born are always pursued by Europeans in the end, and then become historical figures. Lu Chang'an sneered and went around in circles for many years, traveling all over the world. Why would he still come back here? There are always people who feel that if they live forever, they will have no national identity, no concept of family and country, and will think that they are superior and treat wars of nations, races, and civilizations indifferently. In fact, if they live for a long time, in some cases it is true that I look at things very lightly, without such deep obsessions, or so much hatred, but I become more and more aware of my heart, and become more and more accustomed to a place where I can feel calm and natural, and I will find a place where I can feel calm and natural. I keep going back to the place I feel most accustomed to. There is also a reason why I am not used to places where the roots of civilization and history rely on lies and forgery. The Western practice of forging history is to dig up a person, whether it is a great emperor or a pharaoh, and then find a record according to the Bible or Homer's epic, and when needed, find a bottle of ashes. It's Aristotle, and it's completely made on demand. Lu Yuwang said to Zhang Dao and Hans Hizi earnestly, I will send you the article I saw criticizing Western archaeological pseudoscience on WeChat later. Look, it was written by a history professor I know, a very famous one, and I personally asked for advice. Mom, but as soon as you said you posted it on WeChat, I felt that what you said was not convincing. Of course, An Nuan was the #1 reader who Lu Yuwang forwarded it first. Actually, it's easy to understand. It's very common to seek glory for your ancestors. Everyone should understand that it's normal to even be deceived. But if you still stubbornly believe in the scam after being exposed, it would be too stupid. Lu Chang'an waved his hand. Forget it, Alexander has condensed his divine power, and he won't be able to shake it for a while. So we walked into the restaurant to eat together, but the painting at the door of the restaurant was worth so much, which made people want to sit upright and enjoy this high-end meal seriously. Lu Yuwang booked a private room by the window. It would be a waste not to sit by the window in the restaurant on the 89th floor. After sitting down, he first marveled at the scenery and then sat down properly. Lu Yuwang was obviously not the first time here, so he was calm and collected. Very. Of course Lu Chang'an is more calm and composed. He is a person who has jumped from the roof of a higher building. Although Zhou Dongdong has also been to the fairy sister's house, now he wants to climb on Lu Chang'an's back to stand higher. It's interesting to see farther away. Lu Chang'an was twisted aside without hesitation and stood there. He was already so tall. What difference would it make if he stood a little higher? Don't be so rude to the children. Lu Yuwang waved to Zhou Dongdong. Come here, sit down here. Thank you, sister. Zhou Dongdong climbed to the chair next to Lu Yuwang and sat down. Lu Yuwang was elated and suppressed her laughter. She had just finished her facial work, and the beautician told her not to make any violent facial expressions for the time being. But I am really happy. Although I am embarrassed to call myself sister, as long as I talk to Zhou Dongdong more, she will definitely call her sister non-stop. I'm really immortal. Author, Chulian Kui Kan Ru Xiahua. Chapter 195. Most of the seats in the restaurant are scattered by the window. After all, the aerial view is also one of the restaurant's selling points, and the fully visible kitchen that Lu Yuwang originally said is in the center of the restaurant. There are not many customers in the restaurant at this time. Come and invite guests to visit the kitchen that is said to be the most expensive in the entire Juncha, and the chef is Mr. Zhang Jiai, the youngest chef of Taiwan Mi Samsung restaurant. Lu Chang'an didn't visit the kitchen. In fact, he didn't care much about food safety. As long as the food was delicious, even if arsenic was used as seasoning, he would still eat it. How many people can live to tell others that Tanjing Bay produce the green lantern puffer fish? Its ovary position is very delicious. Everyone only knows that the ovaries of wild pufferfish can poison dozens of people. The girls happily visited the kitchen under the glass and came back. The waiter brought vegetable clear soup and introduced that this clear soup is exactly the same as the Taiwanese branch of Zuji's Mission restaurant. It is made entirely from vegetables and has a gentle texture. Mellow. Everyone ordered their own meals. At first, they wanted to seriously express that they were also regulars of high-end restaurants with a very stylish temperament. However, when ordering, they finally revealed their true intention of having a lively meal. They ordered each of the 3 types of pre-dinner bread. I decided to try a different flavor, and ordered bluefin tuna, carpaccio, crispy suckling pig, veal Milanese, lobster pasta, almond butter with licorice frosting, pan-fried Icelandic lobster with mashed potatoes, and fish roe sauce steamed eggs. Lu Chang'an did not order a la carte, but ordered 2 set meals for himself and Zhou Dongdong. The set meals were just like this, and the price did not include service fees. Lu Chang'an originally thought he was eating Chinese food, but did not expect it to be Western food. With such a set meal, Zhou Dongdong probably also can you feed me? Lu Chang'an was not sure, but judging from the girl's ordering methods, he should be able to save some for Zhou Dongdong. Aunt Lu, it cost you money. Zhang Dao looked a little embarrassed after looking at the price. Hans Hizzi was not polite. She and her mother often took An Nuan out to eat. In fact, most middle-aged women have similar consumption concepts. They can pick and choose at the vegetable market, or they can spend money like water in high-end restaurants without changing their expressions. Lu Yuwanja is not always so extravagant, but once in a while, he is really generous and doesn't care about ordering more dishes. Lu Yuwang also ordered some wine. When he went back, Lu Yuwang also had several female drivers on his phone, so there would be no problem. Since it is a celebration, of course you have to drink. Except for Zhou Dongdong, all the girls can drink a little wine. Lu Chang'an also drinks. The prosperity of red wine is not just because of the popularity of Western culture. It has its own merits. Lu Chang'an will not just drink white wine, but hold a bottle of Urquatu and look fierce and bold. After eating for a long time, everyone discussed their future college life. Although Nuan and Hans Hizi basically grew up in a university campus environment, they have truly become quasi-college students, and they still have some expectations for the study life in the near future that is different from high school. After you go to college, you should study hard and don't think about what you have and what you don't have. Let me tell you something in advance. There are more than 200 registered HIV carriers in Lushan University town, and there are still some who have not been detected. I don't know how much, but further spread is certain, Lu Yuang said with a cautious expression. This is data from the Government Affairs Department. The university town thinks the impact is not good, but there is no way, it will still be published. Oh my god, it's so scary. Zhang Dao hugged Nuan beside him in fear. Nuan, let's be together. Yeah. Then Admi Hans Hizi also wanted to hug each other for warmth. Lu Chang'an was suddenly forced to break up and became a loner, so he had no choice but to touch the head of Zhou Dongdong, who was eating seriously. Xiang University is better, but the other school is more serious. HIV transmission is based on a sample survey of college students. Gay transmission accounts for the vast majority, but how many people are there in a university town, and how many are gay among them? Such a calculation in Lushan, the proportion of gay men infected with HIV among college students is alarming, Lu Yuang said and looked at Lu Chang'an. Professor Lu, what do you think I'm doing? Lu Chang'an was very unhappy. Because you are the only male here, and Nuan was happy to see her mother's little actions make Lu Chang'an depressed. Lu Chang'an is a straight man. As a classmate, Zhang Dao still has to say something fair. So, we are still safe. Hans Hizi breathed a sigh of relief. Some people can be either boys or girls. Sister, Auntie reminds you that falling in love in college is what every girl looks forward to, but today's society is too complicated and chaotic. Sometimes, even if you are clean and tidy, you will inevitably fall in love. If you are hurt, the key is to protect yourself and improve your ability to distinguish. Lu Yuang invited them to dinner today, and also wanted to send some words to tell them, although she is not particularly tactful and sophisticated among her peers. He has rich experience, but after all, he is older and has a higher level of knowledge exposure. He will eventually be able to guide these little girls. The three girls nodded cautiously together. Zhou Dongdong buried his head in eating. She was a person with a barrier. Does it mean that when you fall in love in the future, you need to have the other party take a test first? Zhang Dao said depressedly. Homosexual men are basically tested once a month and carry test strips with them. After they confess their love, they will basically have sex. Before having sex, they will go to a room to test each other. If there is blame, there will basically be problems. This is their common sense. Lu Yuang said expressionlessly that she did not shy away from talking about such topics with little girls, because they were adults and avoiding taboos might cause problems and she would not be able to let them understand in time. Aunt Lu, how do you know so much? Hans Hizi has read Denmi novels, but the descriptions in them are so beautiful. How can they be so unreasonable? I have a student who wrote an investigation report. She had an in-depth understanding of the situation and was almost in danger. The little girl was timid and thin-skinned. She didn't dare to tell her family and classmates. I saw something was wrong with her, so I asked her about it and took her there. I took a test and it turned out to be fine, but during the time when I was afraid and worried about being infected, my body also lost 20 pounds, Lu Yuang said with a sigh. Losing 20 pounds, Hans Hizi and Zhang Dao looked at each other. They both had small bellies, but it was just a ridiculous idea. They really didn't expect to lose weight through this experience, so they might as well stay fat. Lu Chang'an must be very popular in the university, Lu Yuang said to Lu Chang'an again. She asked Nuan again today to confirm some of her impressions. Lu Chang'an's parents died, so the uncle is not Lu Chang'an's father. I'll give you a peachwood sword, Lu Chang'an said to Nuan. You need to be conscious about this, and Nuan said seriously. What are you talking about? Lu Yuwang and others were confused. What he means is that he is very popular. Give me a mahogany sword. If a little vixen comes up to hook up with me, let me slay demons. And Nuan's smile was slightly shy, and somewhat angry. Can you understand this? Zhang Dao and Hans Hizi were stunned. Lu Yuwang looked at Nuan and Lu Chang'an with a complicated expression. This level of tacit understanding was really impressive. Lu Yuwang touched the phone and looked at the information on the phone, feeling distracted and excited. Sorry, I was still typing at 2 o'clock last night. I accidentally saw that an author died suddenly again. I fell asleep in fear. I just got up and will update the outbreak today. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. I'm really immortal. Author, Chulian Kui Kan Ru Xiahua. Chapter 196. While they were chatting, Chef Zhang Jiai came over to say hello. He was wearing the uniform of an executive chef. He looked professional and elegant, and he also had a pretty good-looking body. No wonder he was often featured in gourmet magazines. Mr. Lu, are you satisfied? Zhang Jiai was a little surprised to see Lu Chang'an here. This person has always been the person Zhang Jiai must pay attention to. What Zhang Jiai didn't understand was that since it was Miss Susan who opened the door for him, recently I also got news from my colleagues that Lu Chang'an was selling rice noodles. They are all good, especially the raw beef, which tastes like pork head mixed with coriander. Lu Chang'an replied casually. The smile on Zhang Jiai's face continued, but how could raw meat taste the same as cooked meat? Do you eat pig head meat raw? Mr. Chef, how do you know Lu Chang'an? And Nuan asked very curiously. As a girlfriend, of course she would pay more attention to details related to her boyfriend. Although Zhang Jiai asked Lu Yuwang first, he also knew Lu Yuwang's last name, but that was the seat Lu Yuwang had reserved, and he left his contact information. Our third lady and Mr. Lu are friends. Zhang Jiai could only assume that they were friends, because this beautiful and tall girl was right next to Lu Chang'an, exuding an intimate magnetic field, and it was obvious that the relationship was extraordinary. Zhang Jiai didn't believe it. If Lu Chang'an and the third lady were in a boyfriend-girlfriend relationship, Lu Chang'an would dare to bring other girls to Zuji for dinner. Who is the third young lady? Lu Yuwang asked with concern. Lu Chang'an didn't want to tell Lu Yuwang. That's Zhu Huntang. We met her on a walk that day with Lu Chang'an's cousin, and Nuan reminded Lu Yuwang. Lu Yuwang nodded casually to show that he remembered. Zhang Jiai's eyes fell on Lu Yuwang from time to time. After all, compared to the youthfulness of the girl, this mature lady exuded an intellectual charm that attracted men. There was something similar to Ms. Susan. It feels like it, but it's not as sharp and looks more contact-friendly. Ms. Lu, come here often when you have time. The menu changes every week. Welcome. Yaji and Zhang Jiai was very measured and chatted for a few words before leaving. Lu Chang'an frowned slightly, feeling that Zhang Jiai had some hidden agenda in his heart, but he didn't pay much attention to it. It turns out that in a high-end restaurant, it feels like everyone from the chef to the waiter is exuding. Zhang Dao said involuntarily, but did not go on because it was Lu Yuwang's choice after all. My whole body exudes a very ungrounded air, very out of touch with urban life. After saying this, Hans Hizi burst out laughing, but after laughing twice, she lowered her voice. She was just teasing. If you don't like this kind of place, you can come less often. But now that it's here, of course, we shouldn't make such wild jokes anymore. Girls, don't use bad words. Lu Yuwang frowned and hit Hans Hizi. Hans Hizi laughed twice. In fact, there is no way around it. After all, China has been baptized by the proletarian revolution. Although social classes are being formed, resistance to class solidification and demand for equality are deeply rooted in the hearts of the people. The domestic service industry, especially high-end hotels, clubs, and restaurants, there is a big gap between the service level and service mentality of employees recruited from other places compared with foreign countries. It is definitely not just because of the late start in this aspect in China. Lu Chang'an shook his head gently. Many countries have distinct classes, and they are better at cultivating excellent service. For industry practitioners, the influences and causes are all cited. You mean, if we were still a feudal society and we still had eunuchs and maids, then the level of this kind of service industry would be comparable to that of foreign countries, and Nuan asked. Lu Chang'an nodded. Lu Chang'an, you can really talk nonsense. Hans Hizzi sighed, talking about the restaurant's awesomeness. Lu Chang'an can also talk about the proletarian revolution. But it makes sense, Zhang Daol agreed. I seem to have heard someone talk about this point of view. Lu Yuwang showed a hard-thinking expression. Nuan, let's toast your mother alone. After all, she raised you and worked hard, Lu Chang'an quickly reminded Nuan. Lu Yuwang came back to her senses and looked at Nuan with a smile. Although Nuan didn't fully approve of the hard work, she didn't have any real dissatisfaction with her mother. She poured a small glass of wine and toasted Lu Yuwang. Lu Yuwang was very pleased. He saw Nuan let out a long sigh of relief and stretched out his hand to shake the back of Nuan's hand. In fact, the mother and daughter had already staged a scene of loving mother and daughter at home, but they were restrained from being particularly emotional at this time. Lu Chang'an also breathed a sigh of relief and continued to eat. As the saying goes, too much talk leads to mistakes. After dinner, the lights were on and the night was beginning to fall. Because he had drunk some wine, Lu Yuwang called a driver over and decided to take Zhang Daol home first. Lu Chang'an took Zhou Dongdong's hand and waved goodbye to them. Just as he saw their car leaving, Lu Chang'an received a call from the admissions office teacher, asking him about his intention to apply for Hunan University during the volunteer investigation. Now that his results are out, the teacher from the admissions office wanted to meet him and have a chat. Lu Chang'an only replied that he would definitely apply for Hunan University, but he was not interested in meeting. Zhou Dongdong was full and could no longer walk. She looked chubby. Lu Chang'an thought he could put her on the ground and kick her back, but after thinking about it, he decided against it, so he put her under his arm and took her back. Back in the community, Ms. Lu kept her word. She heard that Lu Chang'an had good grades and could go to Hunan University, so she sent him a basket of eggs and a big hen. Old Man Qian brought a load of bacon on a pole, and Aunt Xie brought a few bottles of wine, because Lu Chang'an often bought wine from her. The owner of the mahjong parlor brought a large number of firecrackers and filled them under the parasol tree. When Lu Chang'an came back, he started setting off firecrackers. The sky above the entire community was full of smoke, and the firefighters were probably alerted. Every year when the college entrance examination results come out, there are always people setting off firecrackers in violation of regulations. As long as nothing happens, the urban management will turn a blind eye. Zhou Dongdong picked up many more firecrackers and filled the 4 small pockets on his body. Lu Chang'an asked casually and knew that it was Zhou Shuling who spread the news about his college entrance examination results. In such a traditional old community, such ambitious children are highly appreciated. High scores represent success. Everyone is willing to express their appreciation and support. The poker friends and ma friends who often played cards together on weekdays all gave gifts and asked Lu Chang'an to serve wine. Lu Chang'an couldn't refuse the hospitality, so he had to agree to hold a phoenix banquet under the sycamore tree at noon tomorrow, and host 2 or 3 tables to entertain these neighbors who had given gifts. The space under the sycamore tree was limited, so Lu Chang'an drove the transport truck aside first, thinking that there would be no coffin cult for 2 days, and he would have to give it a make-up lesson tonight, focusing on modern history. As Emperor Wu of the Han Dynasty, my daughter-in-law must be very touched. We can discuss this with you. All kinds of requests. I'm really immortal. Author, Chulian Kuikan Ryu Siahua. Chapter 197. In the evening, people dispersed and everything was quiet. Lu Chang'an took a broom to clean the front door. The broom left traces of evacuation and dispersion on the ground, some of which were intertwined, like a chessboard on a stone under a deep mountain pine tree, carved by the fingers of an immortal. Lu Chang'an swept up the fallen leaves and firecracker shavings and piled them together, leaving an open space for placing wine tomorrow. Looking up, the two six-story buildings on the left and right had some scattered lights. Because the glass on the windows was old, it seemed to be more dim and yellow than the lights in newly built communities in other places. There were also many people. The feeling of nostalgia is like the little orange light in the text. Lu Chang'an went back to his room to take a shower. When the night got deeper and it became quieter outside the window, Lu Chang'an, who had written a note, came to the carriage of the transport truck with the note. Dan Dan, be well. Lu Chang'an waved towards the coffin. As the saying goes, once you are a teacher, you are always a father. I have been teaching you for a long time. Firstly, it is to let you understand that time has passed and things in the world have changed. Secondly, it is just to make fun of you. Equality. Coffin, of course, ignored him. Lu Chang'an didn't care about the other party's reaction. Since he said so, that was the effect. It didn't matter what the other party's reaction was. It is my right as a teacher to call you by your name. I hope you don't mind. As we get along with each other for a long time, we will remember more and more of the little things we had together in the past. You may be glad that apart from yourself, I am the only one in this world. The only person who remembers your name. Dandan, Dandan, Dandan. Lu Chang'an called her 3 times, but it seemed he didn't dare to answer. Our lecture today will start with a recent current event. The National Palace Museum in Taiwan is going to send the calligraphy, which is known as the second best in the world, to Japan for the first time. Lu Chang'an restored his lecture style. When he was a teacher, he lectured. His style has always been like this. Today we are going to talk about modern history, but you can also just pick something and start talking about it. Anyway, he can talk about it very much. Since there is a second best in the world, you will definitely ask me which one is the best in the world. The best running script in the world is of course Wang Zizi's Landing Preface, but currently there is only a copy of the Tang Dynasty copy. To be more serious, Yan Zhenqing is the second best in the world. His manuscript of Memorials to My Nephew is the best in the world. If such a valuable treasure were to be kept in a museum on the mainland, it would definitely be a national treasure and be included in the list of treasures that must not be sent abroad for exhibition. Lu Chang'an smiled and continued, the irony is that Taiwan is really shameless. They probably don't know how to read or understand history. If we look closely at the spirit of manuscripts for memorials to nephews, where does the shame come from? Are you embarrassed to send it to Japan? It's a bit shameful. They should kneel down in front of this calligraphy and weep and fight 3 times. The traders and ministers did not save them, and they were surrounded by the isolated city. The father was trapped and the son died, and the nest collapsed. At that time, the Yan family, more than 30 people from one family, were killed by swords and saws, and their condition was horrific. Yan Zhenqing searched for the bones of his family members, but only 1 foot and 1 bone was found. He was so sad that he wrote this manuscript of Memorial to Nephew. Lu Chang'an's expression calmed down. Dan Dan, you must be curious as to why Taiwan is not qualified to collect this manuscript of Nephew Memorial now. Then we have to start with Zhu Yuanzhang, one of the most upright people in history. This person must be you too. I appreciate it. 20 years ago, I went to pay homage to his mausoleum. On the way, I met an elder who once said that the great rivers and mountains are guarded by these heroic souls, the backbone of the Han family, which always makes people feel that the spirit of the nation is not high. Everything will be lost. Lu Chang'an placed his copy of manuscript of memorial to nephew on the coffin and began to talk about the tragic history. After the lecture, Lu Chang'an reached out to hold his thermos cup out of habit, but found that this was a habit he had made more than 20 years ago, and now there is no thermos cup around him. I really want to drink cold beer and cold crayfish. After finishing the lecture, Lu Chang'an wanted to know how Su Zhancheng and Ren Changhong were doing now. They were probably still hanging around at Hunan University, but they probably didn't have the chance to teach him. After all, the qualifications are so old. Not necessarily. Some old professors just like to take classes. Whether the school arranges it or not depends on their own wishes. Dan, you must have never eaten iced crayfish. Lu Chang'an knocked on the coffin, but you have a distinguished status. I remember that the summer was quite hot at that time. The Shangguan family's ice feast every summer was famous. Even the princes and grandsons are very coveted. After all, many people can only wait for the U Pavilion to open and use the ice mirror to pack some, but your Shangguan family has their own collection of icebergs. Then Lu Chang'an talked about the fact that the folk use of ice in China in modern times was once monopolized by foreign countries. After all, these side histories were not mentioned in the official history course just now. Can you shut up? A sullen and irritable voice sounded. Lu Chang'an had heard this voice before. It was the voice of Shangguan Dandan who said something to him when the coffin was opened that day. Lu Chang'an looked around and made sure that he was the only one in the carriage and that there were no radios or speakers, and then his eyes fell on the coffin. Dandan, is that you? Lu Chang'an said happily. After giving lectures for many nights, he finally got some responses. It also proved that his lectures were effective and she could indeed hear them. There was no response to this question, but Lu Chang'an didn't mind either. But how did your voice sound like you were speaking in an open place? As an atomic bond crystal, metal contains more electrons that can move freely. It has low resistance and fast sound transmission. However, I have never heard of using coffin boards to transmit sound. Sounds good. Lu Chang'an showed a thoughtful expression. Then you are awake now? You are awake, but you are willing to lie in this coffin in a closed and cramped place without seeing the sun, and do not want to come out. This reminds me of the time when I wandered around the mausoleum of the first emperor, but that place is much bigger, and it's also very interesting. I've even seen a craftsman who was lucky enough to survive. He expected me to take him out, but unfortunately he died before I could open the passage. Lu Chang'an suddenly remembered something and said no more. By the way, you went to stay in the coffin when you saw me. You told me to shut up just now, but you are too fond of me. It seems that you are not interested in listening to me. Say goodbye. Lu Chang'an cupped his hand and said left. Lu Chang'an felt a little ashamed, because he had always been a very self-aware person, but today he didn't seem to have considered that Shangguan Dandan had a deep resentment towards him, Lu, and his old face was slightly shy. Lu Chang'an went back to sleep. When he got up in the morning, Lu Chang'an didn't care about Shangguan Dandan's attitude towards him last night. He took the hen and planned to give it to her. However, thinking that this was the hen raised by Ms. Lu herself, it might be more delicious. It's a waste, let's go to the vegetable market and buy any chicken for her. I am overjoyed to find that I have finally become the author of LV2. I already have a place in the starting point. I am no longer the newbie of LV1, but I am the master of LV2. I'm really immortal. Author, Chulian Kui Kan Ru Xiahua. Chapter 198. Today we have to serve wine, so of course Lu Chang'an has to do it by himself. A few days ago, he cooked at Gao Dui's house and even killed the pigs. There is a set of procedures for serving wine and Lu Chang'an. Of course, Lu Chang'an can handle it easily. But the difference is that no one has prepared the ingredients, so he has to buy them himself. Zhou Shuling said that she wanted to help and stop the breakfast stall for a day. She always felt that she needed help with things like setting up the wine. Although Lu Chang'an had some relatives and friends who seemed to be very powerful, those people didn't seem to come to help Lu Chang'an prepare, so of course she had to come. Help, otherwise it would feel a little heartbreaking for him to have to do things like setting up the drinks by himself. Lu Chang'an and Zhou Shuling went to the vegetable market and bought a big bag of chili peppers. There are also many dishes in Hunan cuisine without chili peppers, but what are their characteristics? What's more, when serving wine among neighbors in the market, which dish doesn't include a bunch of red, green, white, yellow, purple, sliced, round, crushed, and ground chili peppers? Of course, I also bought many kinds of peppers, as well as old ginger, young ginger, dry ginger, vinegar ginger, slotted ginger, etc., plus some garlic, garlic sprouts, shallots, coriander, etc. in a big bag. Buy less food first. Zhou Shuling lowered her voice and thought, for Lu Chang'an's sake, if they give red envelopes, cook more food. If they don't give red envelopes, cook less food. Lu Chang'an couldn't help laughing. Zhou Shuling blushed at his smile, pushed Lu Chang'an and explained, I'm not petty and care about everything. I just don't want you to suffer. Don't always pretend to be a good person. You have to settle what should be settled. Lu Chang'an ignored her. For him, cooking was such an interesting thing, so of course he didn't care about it. However, it was impossible for him to have any feelings of disgust and boredom towards Zhou Shuling's little thoughts. As a woman, she also had little calculations in her heart. It clicked just for his sake. Why do you keep throwing chickens into that car? When she came back, it wasn't the first time Zhou Shuling saw it and she was a little curious. There is a zombie in the car. If she eats the chicken, she won't harm anyone, Lu Chang'an explained in an easy-to-understand way. Zhou Shuling must not understand what she said about the living coffin, the Empress Dowager Shangguan, etc. Ghosts believe you. Zhou Shuling looked startled, but since she was frightened, she obviously believed it. After buying vegetables, Lu Chang'an fried the spicy rooster first and then asked her to go to the stall. In Zhou Shuling's eyes, she felt that Lu Chang'an, who had poor grades, liked to talk nonsense. Lu Chang'an, who had good grades, was naturally knowledgeable and had certain abilities. Authoritative, not to mention Lu Chang'an's reason was that he was worried about opening a rice noodle shop, so Zhou Shuling had no choice but to run a stall. Zhou Dongdong didn't have to go to kindergarten today. After getting up, he ran to Lu Chang'an's place to stay, holding a bunch of firecrackers in his hand. She tied the broken firecrackers she picked up yesterday with a rope one by one, and tied a large bunch. I'll set off firecrackers for you to see. Zhou Dongdong planned to set off these firecrackers to celebrate Brother Chang'an. You can set off these firecrackers, and I'll catch a dog for you to eat. Zhou Dongdong pursed his lips and said, you can't catch dogs. I don't want to eat dogs. Lu Chang'an stretched out his finger, pressed the corner of her lips and wiped the line of saliva. I won't eat dogs. Dogs are very cute and good friends. They can't be eaten. Zhou Dongdong shook his head hard and wiped his mouth. Lu Chang'an went to work, and Zhou Dongdong sat there thinking about a series of complicated issues such as why dogs can't eat but dogs are delicious, why the firecrackers can't go off, and whether Brother Chang'an will catch the dog. Taking out a large basin to wash the peppers, Lu Chang'an smelled the spicy juice spreading in the air, which was very refreshing. Congratulations. Lu Chang'an raised his head and saw Qin Yinan. Today, Qin Yinan is wearing a military green uniform skirt. The straight fabric and straightened corners exude handsomeness. The tight skirt does not wrap up the rounded lower body curve. The slender and tall figure carries a sense of arrogance and oppression. She also held a thin windbreaker in her arm. Although the weather was hot, for women, summer is the time when cold air enters the body. She's dressed in green, she's quite pretty. Lu Chang'an took a second look and realized that the military style suited Qin Yinan very well. The temperament matched and complemented each other. You are going to serve wine, and you didn't even inform me. You see, I didn't even prepare the money. Qin Yinan looked at Lu Chang'an's movements and knew that he, a man who is good at craftsmanship, probably has no interest. Go to the hotel to hold a banquet. WeChat red envelopes and transfers are all possible, Lu Chang'an said while looking at Qin Yinan's mobile phone. Qin Yinan was a little funny and sent 5 red envelopes to Lu Chang'an. Let's stay for a drink at noon today, Lu Chang'an greeted him warmly. Okay. Qin Yinan originally wanted to congratulate him, so she took a look at him and asked him if his application was as planned. It just feels a little strange. If this was the first time I met him, I would definitely give him a red envelope, but I would definitely despise him. Of course I don't have this feeling of contempt now, so I feel that it's really important to know whether people are familiar with each other. It greatly affects the perception of the same thing. Qin Yinan went to greet Zhou Dongdong again. Little Dongdong. Aunt. The conversation ended and there was no desire to continue communicating. Does she call other girls auntie? Qin Yinan squatted in front of Lu Chang'an and asked in a low voice. This was taught by Lu Chang'an. Qin Yinan remembered that Zhou Dongdong called her sister when they first met. Her name is Professor Lu and she is also called Sister. Lu Chang'an laughed. Why, others ignored it? Thinking of Lu Yuwang, Qin Yinan became very unconvinced. Because other sisters give me delicious food, and the one who gives me delicious food is my sister. Bah, whatever, she calls me auntie and you brother Chang, and Qin Yinan didn't care anymore and took advantage of Lu Chang'an. How dare you take advantage of me? You yellow-haired girl is really no big or small, and you don't know how high the sky is. Lu Chang'an sneered. Here, go to the side, my eyesight is too good, I don't want to see it. Qin Yinan quickly raised his windbreaker and put it in front of his knees, glared at Lu Chang'an with a red face, and immediately stood up. How could I be so casual in front of him? A girl's reserve and defensiveness should be an instinct that should be kept in mind at all times. Come and chop the peppers for me. Lu Chang'an didn't care about her reaction and pointed to the chopping board calmly. I'll kill the chicken first. When he heard that the chicken was going to be killed, Zhou Dongdong immediately dropped the firecrackers in his hand and ran over to join in the fun. Brother Chang'an, can I light the fire? Children always think that making a fire is fun, but Lu Chang'an has no need for it. He lifts Zhou Dongdong aside, and then cuts the hen's throat with a knife, causing chicken blood to splash. Zhou Dongdong, come and help me chop the peppers. Qin Yinan saw Zhou Dongdong wiping his eyes with his hands and immediately said enthusiastically. Don't go, you really have the most vicious heart of a woman. I'll just call you auntie. Lu Chang'an immediately discovered Qin Yinan's evil intentions. I'm just teasing her. Do you really want her to cut it? Qin Yinan rolled her eyes at Lu Chang'an and waved the kitchen knife in her hand. He raised the knife and cut off the head of a pepper stalk with the sharp kitchen knife. The edge of the kitchen knife grazed the distracted Qin Yinan's fingers, leaving a gray mark. Qin Yinan hurriedly glanced at Lu Chang'an and found that he had not noticed her. Then he breathed a sigh of relief. 1 is 1, 2 is 2, black is black, white is white, glory will not be obliterated, and the heartbroken will never be forgiven. We will pursue the case where it is due, adhere to an objective stance, and will not be swayed by temporary emotions. Considering that some readers come to criticize me when they are dissatisfied with current affairs, I will probably respond as above. In addition, I would like to recommend Sun King Gui's The Traces of Yuzai. By the way, think about the countless archaeologists and historians who have worked hard all their lives to prove the Xia dynasty. Some people even said lightly and skillfully when others questioned Homer's epic, there was no way to prove it during that period, so it was natural to use Homer as an argument. It was really interesting. The brain is indeed a good thing, but if you automatically think that others can do it and we cannot do it and we have to treat it differently, then there is something wrong with the brain. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. I'm really immortal. Author, Chulian Kuikan Rusiahua. Chapter 199. Chinyanan put down the kitchen knife and went to wash her hands under the faucet. The water splashed, 3 or 2 drops falling on her shoes, and 4 or 5 drops on her calves. The color of the water was as crystal clear as her skin. She picked up her windbreaker hanging on the back of the chair where Lu Chang'an was sitting, took out a jade guanyin from her pocket and hung it around her neck. Lu Chang'an was washing vegetables. He looked back and didn't care why she was chopping vegetables. He suddenly went to get a jade guanyin and hung it around his neck. I haven't been sleeping well recently. I feel like I've been frightened by gods and ghosts. It turned out that I went to Mayan temple with Zhu Huntang and invited a jade guanyin. I felt like I could quell the ghosts and ghosts. Chinyanan thought of herself a little guilty. Explaining, he unbuttoned the 2 buttons on his chest and put jade guanyin in. Your great-grandfather wrote an article on the guiding role of dialectical materialism in the construction of modern spiritual civilization. You can read it, Lu Chang'an suggested. Of course I've seen it, but have you misunderstood something? Dialectical materialism is the foundation of all Marxist doctrines and the worldview and methodology of the proletariat, but it does not teach us to directly deny all unknown things. Chinyanan was unconvinced. Said. What I mean is that you need to learn to make progress and strengthen your beliefs and will, which will help you sleep. Moreover, studying relevant works on Marxist theory will help you understand the objective world materially and dialectically, so that you will not be afraid of there are no bulls, ghosts, and snake gods. Lu Chang'an glanced at the place where Chinyanan placed the jade guanyin, and asked tentatively, what's wrong, is it really a ghost? No, I'm just worried about sleepwalking again. Chinyanan turned around and walked to the chopping board. How could there really be a ghost? I just remembered some of the customs and traditions I had seen when I was a child, like how to summon spirits and drive away ghosts. Ghost, pen fairy. What customs and traditions does Bixian belong to? That's all I said, don't criticize me. Chinyanan was upset and started chopping the peppers. Your relatives are here. My relative here is you. Lu Chang'an brought a pig's trotter over and pointed at Chinyanan. Say it again? I'll stuff the pig's trotter into your mouth. Chinyanan burst out laughing. She was a bit arrogant, her cheeks were slightly ashamed. Sorry, who told you to talk nonsense? Lu Chang'an didn't really mind. Only in feudal superstition would a woman's menstruation be juxtaposed with black dog blood. He just wanted Chinyanan to chop the cleaned pig's trotters. But now that he mentioned this, Lu Chang'an couldn't help but turn his head and glance at the armored transport vehicle not far away. Shang Guandandan might have been in a state of complete cessation of physiological functions in the living coffin before, but now she is alive. She still looks like an innocent and lively, autistic little girl. Lu Chang'an thought for a while, put down the pig's trotters in his hand, and went to Aunt Xie's canteen to buy a pack of sanitary napkins. Why are you, a boy, selling this? Aunt Xie chuckled. We have guests at home. Lu Chang'an didn't mind. While Aunt Xie was greeting other customers, Lu Chang'an walked over and put the sanitary napkin into the transport truck. He originally wanted to explain how to use this thing, but he opened his mouth for a while and left without saying anything, just like a remote control. It's easy to use once you pick it up. Girls should know what this thing is for just by looking at it. Does this kind of thing consume a lot? Even Lu Chang'an has never been curious or concerned about this issue, but he has a wealth of knowledge reserves. Taking the general female model as an example, that is, Nuan, taking into account the final calculation requirements of flow and duration, Lu Chang'an feels that every time now in terms of daily consumption of pullets, the increase in expenses is not much. After all, there is income from selling rice noodles. Seeing Lu Chang'an walking out of the armored transport vehicle, Chinyanan asked, what is this thing for? Today is different from the past. After all, everyone is familiar with each other. Naturally, Qin Yan'an can't help but be curious. At first, she just thought that the task was completed, so she didn't bother to care about how Lu Chang'an handled this strange return gift. The coffin can be used for anything else. It can contain a living person or a dead person, Lu Chang'an said. Among the elderly, Qin Yan'an sighed, with a complex and indescribable loneliness in his expression. Probably only at their age can they easily look down on life and death, and give them a coffin for death. Do you think this coffin was given to Mr. Yechaniu by your great-grandfather? Lu Chang'an said with a smile. Why are you laughing? Your great-grandfather is also very old. This is a very real problem, Qin Yan'an said, dissatisfied. Lu Chang'an looked at Qin Yan'an carefully again. This girl is really flawless. She can't be so similar in acting. Yes, she is Yesijan's great-granddaughter. People have lived for a long time, not to mention looking directly into people's hearts, but their intuition has become extremely developed. It is too difficult to fake in front of him. The coffin seems to be very well made, but the strange thing is, if it is an ordinary coffin, does it need to be escorted like this? Even if it is very expensive, you only need to find a security company. Qin Yan'an was still a little surprised. Do you want to go and have a look again? Lu Chang'an always felt that Qin Peng's choice of Qin Yan'an to escort might have some deep meaning, but Qin Peng has always been extremely stubborn. If there was something he didn't want to reveal, he made a special trip to ask him. It's of no use. What's more, nowadays, things have changed and people have changed. Qin Peng probably no longer thinks about it, but he also said that they would only meet before his death. Okay, Qin Yan'an hesitated and said, reaching out to touch the jade guanyin on his chest to calm his mind. After all, he was going to see the coffin, but he couldn't feel the outline of the pendant through his clothes. Then he remembered that he was wearing these pendants. The pendant is in a lower position and is always in the same state, which is very helpless. Lu Chang'an and Qin Yan'an walked to the armored transport vehicle together. The morning sunshine had already acquired the majesty of a scorching sun, but whether it was a psychological effect, Qin Yan'an still felt that when Lu Chang'an opened the door of the carriage, there was a gloomy and cold atmosphere inside. Qin Yan'an shook his head. He was really looking at everything these days, and followed Lu Chang'an into the carriage. Lu Chang'an closed the door, leaving himself and Qin Yan'an in the carriage. Except for Zhou Dongdong, who once tried to rush in and was carried out by Lu Chang'an, no other neighbors had seen what was there. Lu Chang'an was stunned for a moment. Where are the sanitary napkins? Really gone? What did you see? Seeing Lu Chang'an staring at an empty place, Qin Yan'an asked in shock. Damn it, Lu Chang'an said subconsciously. Don't scare me. Qin Yan'an nervously held Lu Chang'an's arm. She really believed that there were ghosts in this world. All kinds of requests. I'm really immortal. Author, Chu Lian Kui Kan Ru Xiahua. Chapter 200. Lu Chang'an patted the back of Qin Yan'an's hand and gently pulled his arm out of her arms. He felt a hard spot on his arm, which was her jade guanyin. It seems that even the jade guanyin invited from Mayan temple did not bring her real peace. Lu Chang'an looked at her doubtfully. Do you really believe in ghosts? Qin Yan'an nodded vigorously. If a dialectical materialist believes in ghosts, he has probably seen ghosts many times. What Lu Chang'an said would not be taken to heart by others, and they would just treat him as nonsense. But on the other hand, Lu Chang'an could easily read it, find something in seemingly absurd expressions and language. No. I'm just afraid. Just because I believe in ghosts doesn't mean I've definitely seen ghosts. Qin Yan'an took 2 steps back and leaned against the car. Lu Chang'an looked at Qin Yan'an. Qin Yan'an's breathing was slightly rapid, but she didn't look like she was lying. If you have never seen a ghost, but you believe there are ghosts, that means you have at least felt the existence of ghosts. Ghost. Lu Chang'an looked at the coffin in front of him, and then at Qin Yan'an. Can you feel what's in the coffin? Lu Chang'an asked curiously. Qin Yinan was startled. Ah, what do you mean, what's in the coffin? Don't you feel there's a ghost in the coffin? No. It wasn't because she felt there was a ghost in the coffin that she believed it, so what happened to make her feel the presence of a ghost? Sleepwalking. Lu Chang'an felt that the only event that could be connected at this moment was sleepwalking. Zhu Huntang's description was like seeing a ghost, which became Lu Chang'an's association label. In other words, Qin Yinan did not regard her sleepwalking as an ordinary sleepwalking as she said. She probably thought that she was possessed by a ghost. She claims to be a dialectical materialist, so she will definitely believe in scientific explanations. Even if she is distressed about sleepwalking, she should not feel that she is possessed by a ghost. Unless her sleepwalking situation is very abnormal, so abnormal that it cannot be explained by sleepwalking. She lived alone, and Zhu Huntang did not sleep with her anymore. If Zhu Huntang found anything unusual, he would definitely come to Lu Chang'an. So how did she discover her abnormality? When sleepwalking, do you know that you are sleepwalking, and are you consciously aware of your words, deeds, and expressions? The possibility of sleepwalking is very small, but she installed a camera. Later, she learned about the strangeness of her sleepwalking through the surveillance of the camera. This possibility is very high, combined with the fact that when she went to her house for the first time, she happened to destroy the video recorded by the surveillance camera, which means that it was probably not an accident, but her intention. She didn't want it to happen. Others saw the strange situation when she was sleepwalking, but Zhu Huntang's description was actually the real situation, not the impression given by Qin Yinan's understatement. It seems that Qin Yinan's computer is a key point, but she probably won't casually agree to hand over her computer to Lu Chang'an, and Lu Chang'an is too lazy to find excuses to lie. If Lu Chang'an doesn't think it's appropriate to do this by himself, then let Zhu Huntang do it. The Book of Rites says that all living things must die and return to the earth after death. This is called a ghost. Lu Chang'an took Qin Yinan's hand that unconsciously stretched out to pull his arm, pulled her to the side of the coffin, and putting his hand on the coffin. The people here are living people. Of course they are not ghosts. They are zombies at most. Qin Yinan's fingers trembled slightly, and the bronze coffin had a cold and almost gloomy feeling even in the summer, like a furnace in Juncha. It was like walking into an ancient tavern. Even if the Iceman was wearing thick clothes, he still felt you will feel cold air entering your body and shiver all over. Qin Yinan's fingertips seemed to tremble for a moment due to the cold air, and then fell down again. What puzzled her was that although the light and dark environment in the carriage had not changed, the painted patterns she saw were on her fingertips. There was an increase and decrease in light and shade, showing the lifelike beauty of lines and patterns before her eyes. There were also other sounds and images. It's a pity, if not for the lack of time. Are you still in the mood to think about this? Bury it quickly. Look at her staring at us fiercely like a little bitch, haha, baga. The voices of several men speaking in a mixture of Chinese and Japanese and speaking in Kansai accent, with a smell of ferocity and cruelty, and a mixture of courage and firm belief, appeared in Qin Yinan's mind for a moment. What kind of scene is that? Or a very common scenario? Someone is going to die. She wore simple local clothes. In order to perform the task, her pretty cheeks were painted red and black, and her hair was messy. She loved being clean the most, and she had never cleaned this dress she bought from a fellow villager. She was probably been wearing a coat that hasn't been washed all winter. Her eyes were still shining brightly, whether they were filled with hatred or unwillingness, they always had a firm light, and her face was filled with stubbornness and fearlessness. A hole was dug in the ground. Her enemies definitely had no intention of collecting the bodies of the dead, but they were happy to bury a person alive. She dug the hole herself. After digging for a while, she patted it down and leveled the soil at the bottom. She was going to die, but she had to maintain her dignity and not show any ugly signs of struggle or surrender to satisfy their cruel expectations. While I'm away, you should take care and don't die. But, some things are dangerous, but someone has to do them. He doesn't want to die, but should other comrades die? Today, I really have to sacrifice, but I don't have too many regrets, because in addition to myself, the sacrifices of countless people have created the final victory, which is right in front of me. She is also a touch of red in the rivers of blood flowing in this land. It's a pity that I can't see victory anymore, and I can't see the future of this country. Maybe the future will not be as perfect as ideal, but it will definitely be better than now, and I will never regret the sacrifices made now. Just like life, nothing is eternally beautiful, but we will never give up the pursuit of ideals. She can no longer see him. She has been accustomed to relying on him and being protected by him since she was a child. Even in more dangerous situations, he also protects her safety. Maybe it is because of this that she always feels that she cannot die. Not afraid of death. But she never thought that one day he would leave and she would face these most insane scum in human history alone. She still remembers the boy she met when she was a child. The clan uncle pulled him to her side. He is your brother. That young man's features seemed to be as clear as before, and he was probably the only one who existed eternally. Brother, we all know there is no afterlife, but I really want to see you again. All kinds of requests.